Chair, the lady will announce when we're live.
Right. Good morning, everybody, and good morning to everybody watching on YouTube. Before I formally start the meeting, there is some preamble I have to go through for legal reasons. So first of all, can I confirm that this meeting is being held in accordance with the Licensing Act 2003 and the Licensing Act Hearing Regulations 2005, which allows councils to make their own arrangements for licensing subcommittees to hearing matters in connection with premises license. I will go to each subcommittee member in turn to confirm that they can hear and be heard. So if you could verbally confirm that you're able to hear me, and I will confirm in response that I can hear you. Where practicable, please also have your video switched on so that you can be seen by other members and the public watching. First of all, Councillor Paul Andrews.
Good morning all, and good morning, Chair. I can see and hear you clearly.
Good morning, Councillor Andrews. I can see and hear you too. And Councillor Tony Johnson.
I can see and hear you clearly, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. And I can see you clearly as well. Good morning to you, Councillor Johnson. We are also joined by council officers. First of all, there's Emma Bowell, who is the licensing officer.
Good morning all. I can hear and see you, Chairperson.
And I can see and hear you. Good morning to you, Sarah. Emma, rather. And Sarah is next, Sarah Buffrey, who is clerk to the committee this morning.
Good morning, Chair. I can see and hear you.
And good morning to you as well, Sarah. Alice McAlpine, who is our legal representative this morning. Can you hear us, Alice?
I can see and hear you, Chair. Can you see and hear me?
I can see and hear you clearly now. Good morning, Alice. And finally, we have Jen Priest, who is our technical support officer for this morning.
Good morning, Chair. I can hear and see you.
Good morning. I can hear and see you also. The council is video and audio streaming this meeting live on the internet and making a recording. The recording forms a part of the public record of the meeting and will be available on the council's website. Please note that it is the council's preference that, where you're able to do so, you have your audio switched on as well as the audio stream. Could I also remind members to ensure they wear their headsets if possible, as we have improves the audio quality as well. And there are some additional points that we should be aware of. As part of our meeting etiquette, all microphones apart from mine will be placed on mute at the start and during the meeting. I will then run through the agenda in the customary way. When you wish to speak, please use the virtual hand, which is located somewhere on your toolbar at the bottom of the screen. I will then invite you to speak, and you may unmute yourself at that point. Please do not raise your physical hands, as I may miss you, and I don't want to miss any contributions that either members or members of the public have to make. Could you please ensure that all mobile devices are switched to mute or off? If an attendee loses connection, the meeting will be paused to ascertain if the connection can be restored quickly. This is particularly relevant this morning because I had terrible trouble with Microsoft Teams first thing this morning. If it is not possible to recover the connection within a reasonable amount of time, the meeting will continue as long as a quorum of committee members remains able to hear the proceedings. If you plan to leave the meeting before the end, could you please indicate this in advance? Are there any questions before we continue from anybody? No? Okay. Well, again, good morning to everybody. I will now formally open the meeting. Item 1 on the agenda are apologies for absence. Are there any apologies for absence?
No, we have no apologies this morning, Chair.
Thank you very much, Sarah. So in that case, there are no named substitutes. My words are getting fuddled this morning. Item 3 on the agenda with declarations of interest. Are there any declarations from members of the committee of Schedule 1, Schedule 2 or other interests which members may wish to declare? I see none from there. Okay, that's good. Then we will proceed to the meat of this morning's meeting, which is to hear an application for the grant of a premises license in respect of Pepe's Piri Piri at 21 Commercial Street, Hereford, HR 12DE, under the Licensing Act 2003. Now, this is a application for a late night refreshment license, I believe, and I will now pass over to a licensing officer to give us the case, please. Emma.
Thank you, Chair. As the Chair rightly said, this is an application to consider a grant of a premise licence in respect of Pepe's Piri Piri, 21 Commercial Street in Hereford. There are a number of recommendations and alternative options that are set out in this report that you've all had a copy of. And the reasons for these are it ensures compliance with the Licensing Act 2003. The application for a grant of a premise licence has received a relevant representation and is therefore brought before you today. Herefordshire Council's Statement of Licensing Policy 2020 to 2025 states all representations must be relevant. For example, they must be about the likely effect of the grant of the application. This followed paragraph 8.57 in a section 182 guidance, which uses the same wording. The applicant is Illura Limited and the agent is Architecture and Interior Design Limited. The application was received on the 19th of July 2021 with a 28-day consultation starting on the 20th of July. 28-day consultation ended on the 16th of August 2021. The application, which can be found at Appendix 1, requests the following. Late night refreshment for indoors, Monday to Friday, 11 p.m. until 1 a.m. and Saturday and Sunday from 11 p.m. until 2 a.m. The reason for these hours is that late night refreshment, which includes the sale and supply of hot food and hot drink, is only applicable under the Licensing Act 2003 between the hours of 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. One representation was received from a responsible authority, which is West Mercia Police. The conditions have been agreed with the applicant and can be found at Appendix 2. One relevant representation has been received from a member of the public that the licensing authority have accepted as being relevant and can be found at Appendix 3. Any decision may have an impact on the local community. Excuse me. There are a number of equality duties available in this report and also financial implications, which there are none at this time. There are a number of legal implications set out in the report that your legal team and advisor can advise you on further should you need to. There is a right of appeal under Schedule 5 of the Licensing Act 2003. An appeal should be made to the Magistrates Court and must be made within 21 days, beginning with the day on which the appellant was notified by the licensing authority of the decision. There is little risk associated with the decision due to the 21-day appeal. All responsible authorities and members of the public living within Herefordshire have been consulted, and appendices 1 to 3 can be found at the back of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Emma. Are there any questions for a licensing officer from members of the committee? Councillor Johnson, okay. One question from me, Emma. We've received a lot of representations of photographic and video evidence. Can I just check, Emma, that all those have been shared with the applicant?
They haven't, I'm afraid, Chair, because seeking legal advice from legal services, they weren't deemed as relevant and can be considered under this licensing regime.
Okay. Alice, you have your hand raised.
I was just going to confirm exactly what Emma said, which is although they're not considered to be relevant representations to this application, therefore have not been shared or published as such.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, we are joined this morning by Councillor Jeremy Milne, who's the ward member for the Central Ward. He is in the role in this particular, as a member of the public, having lodged an objections to this this application. So I will call you Councillor Milne, although you are Mr. Milne in this particular setting. Councillor Milne, the floor is yours for 3 minutes at least.
Thank you, Chair. I hope you'll forgive me. I'm going to be 5 minutes.
Okay, I'll let you have 5 minutes.
Right. Thank you for giving your time to consider this licence application at 21 Commercial Street, Hereford. We are here to consider how grant of the licence applied for may have bearing on the licensing objectives for public safety and the prevention of nuisance in the immediate environment of the applicant's premises. The issues of public safety and nuisance, which are occurring every evening on Commercial Street, are associated with the driving of motor vehicles in the High Town pedestrian zone, largely by delivery agents acting for customers of the fast food outlets, including Piri Piri at number 21. The activity has become prevalent since the start of the pandemic and frequently reported to the police and the council's parking enforcement team, who have done their best, but perhaps with limited success. Councillor Paul Rowan lodged a strong complaint of the activity on the 3rd of June, evidencing it photographically. His visit and the photographic evidence being confirmed by the CCTV compliance manager, who wrote in an email at 11:06 on the 4th of June, I quote, "I can confirm that the council's CCTV system shows these vehicles, 10 in total, plus 2 mopeds, were all delivery drivers for McDonald's and Peri Peri, and that Councillor Rowan can be seen taking the photo at 22:04 the previous evening. The CEO, enforcement officer on duty last night, was on until 2100 hours and dealt with a number of delivery drivers whilst on duty and conversed with the CCT operator on duty during the evening." Unquote. The parking enforcement manager explains that 2100 hours is the latest his team will work due to reasons of personal safety, his officers not being provided with the level of body armour that the police have. In other words, the stationary traffic offences cannot be enforced after 9 p.m. Under the current consent regime, where the outlets in the pedestrian zone are open until 11 p.m, there are therefore 2 hours where this breach continues unchallenged. If the application is granted, it will extend it potentially to 5 hours. I turn now to the Home Office licensing guidance of October 2012 at section 1.19, which makes it clear that, I quote, "Licensing authorities and licensees should be mindful of requirements and responsibilities placed on them by other legislation." So, for example, we may consider the Public Order Act 1986 relevant if a proprietor knowingly serves alcohol to individuals whose consequent behaviour infringes it, because the objectives of the Public Order Act are broadly those of licensing law, and the alcohol would be contributory to the misbehaviour. To be clear, we would not expect the proprietor to enforce the Public Order Act, but in consideration of his licence, we would expect him to exercise judgment in the sale of alcohol. In the case before you, we may consider the prohibition of driving in the pedestrianised zone order under the Road Traffic Regulation Act 1984 relevant, where a proprietor serves takeaway fast food to individuals whose consequent behaviour infringes it, because the objectives of the pedestrian zone for public safety are broadly those of licensing law, and the serving of food to such drivers would be contributory to the misbehaviour. Again, to be clear, we would not expect the proprietor to enforce the pedestrian zone order, but in consideration of his licence, we would expect him to exercise judgment when, by selling goods to those who break the law, he encourages such nuisance and disorder. Commercial Street is popular with youngsters after 11 p.m, especially at weekends when the pubs and bars begin to empty. The driving of motor vehicles attending Piri Piri and other outlets in the pedestrian zone therefore presents an increased hazard the later it continues, as more and more people, many of them intoxicated, move onto the streets. Members, you may be considering whether a condition might be placed upon Piri Piri not to serve customers who have driven in the pedestrian zone to reach the premises by car, or agree to a delivery model exclusively by the 2 electric cycles the applicant has apparently ordered. Officers have already advised that such a condition would be unenforceable. We must address the situation as we find it, not as we would wish it to be. The situation is that the driving breach itself has proven unenforceable by the authorities, and therefore the only course of action open to you as things stand is to refuse the application, because to consent it would add to the frustration of the licensing objectives for public safety and the prevention of nuisance. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Milne. Are there any questions from members? Councillor Milne? Alice, you had your hand raised at one point. Is there any points you want to make on from the legal point of view on this?
I would just like to remind you, Chair, that you cannot use the licensing regime to fix, in inverted commas, a problem that has not been properly addressed under the correct legislation.
That is not what I'm suggesting.
Councillor Milne, just I mean, we'll take this into consideration when we have our private deliberations later. So if there are no further questions for Councillor Milne, I'll turn to Mr. Malik, who's acting as agent for Peri-Peri Pepe's. Mr. Malik.
Good morning, Chair, Councillors. Thank you for
morning.
giving us the opportunity to speak on behalf of the client. Just want to give a bit of brief information in regards to the delivery process and the numbers in terms of percentages. 42% deliveries directly from Pepe's themselves. So an order comes in directly to Pepe's system, and then an order is dispatched, whether that's a takeout or it's an eating and so on. In relation to the Just Eat, Uber and Deliveroo, Just Eat orders are controlled by the drivers and the manager staff within Pepe's themselves. So 42 plus 28, 70% of deliveries are done in-house. The Uber Eats and Deliveroo equate to 30% in total, and they are a system which I think for the youth is so easy to utilize nowadays that they tend to rely on that, although they get charged an additional fee between £2 and £4. So what we're encouraging the customers to do is do in-house orders, and hence the reason behind of purchasing the 2 electrical vehicles in terms of mopeds, in order to control the actual orders in terms of reduction of orders from outside of Uber Eats or Deliveroo, and controlling the orders from in-house. So the manager would give training to the order delivery aspect of it to tell them in order that parking safely, abiding by the code and so on. Now there is access to the rear, which is mail-lord landlords, which the council have put a restriction that we can't use the rear access. If that rear access was utilised, it would totally eliminate this situation. The client has an access to the rear door. Deliveries can be done from there. So one option is to request that is something that could be looked at between the whole team today, that if we can get access consented by the council, because I understand the council put a restriction on there to mail-lords and the landlords, that would ease off a lot of the congestion of vehicles onto the actual site. One thing the councillor mentioned, which I think was very important, was that McDonald's are also utilising that delivery zone in that area. What we are finding from our CCTV and our evidence that we've got, which we can present forward at request, is that they are parking outside our premises and going over to McDonald's, because there's a zone there that's easy to park in, and I think that's the other issue, as well as with Burger King. So it's not just, as the councillor stated, just from Pepe's themselves. Pepe's thrive on quality of service, and we've got over 142 stores that are currently open at this moment in time. This is, I'd say, the second issue that's occurred really in principle. Overall, we've personally done 140 Pepe's ourselves. I think the main aspect is, how do we overcome this issue to satisfy and make sure that safeguarding for the pedestrians is carried out. Like we said, we've purposely purchased 2 vehicles. which can be parked internally, basically, to ease the congestion in any way form, ease the aspect of safety. And this is what we're proposing to do. Option one is that we are encouraging all our orders to come directly to ourselves, so they control the two vehicle flow within that pedestrian area, which is increasing. We believe will be increased because the customers will be encouraged that why waste that additional £2 or £4 as an order, and come to us directly, and we can utilise it in that manner. Option number two, like we said, if the council accepts, we could look at utilising the rear access, which would eliminate this problem altogether. It's not a gated access to the back; it's a free flow format. But it's a service yard for the whole estate. But we've been told by our landlord, due to council consent, we're not allowed to utilise it as the other retailers there. So thank you for your time. If there's any questions, I'm more than happy to assist.
Thank you very much, Mr. Malik. Are there any questions from Councillor Johnson, Councillor Andrews? No? Okay, thank you for that. It's now at 10:25. We will reconvene here at 10:45, having considered this case. So if you could pause. Excellent. Welcome back, everybody. Before we come to the decision, I will go to each member in turn and ask if they can hear and be heard. First of all, Councillor Paul Andrews.
Hello again, Chair. Yes, I can hear and see you clearly.
I can hear and see you also. Councillor Tony Johnson.
Thank you, Chairman. I can see and hear you clearly.
And are you, Councillor Johnson? Okay, this is the decision of the committee on Pepe's Peri Peri in Commercial Street. We've heard from our licensing officer and licensing team, from Councillor Milne, who's acting as a member of the public in this case, and the applicant's agent, Mr. Malik. And we take great note of the traffic issues that there are in Commercial Street. However, we did find it difficult to relate these issues specifically to the premises that's being applying for the license today. And we note also, which makes the decision even more difficult, the proximity of other premises that are open till much later, certainly down Commercial Road. With that in mind, we are minded to grant the licence as applied for. That is the decision of the committee today. And I say a very good day to all members of the public, and could the live stream be stopped?